We are here. This is Madge Scott, my new best friend, Madge Scott. Madge is an international folk and contemporary artist whose vibrant paintings, I expect no less, and collages celebrate resilience and community. Her deeply human works reflect her cultural heritage and personal spirit. I had a feeling. Take it away.
So, I can talk about my work if somebody asks a question first. That's easy. It makes it easier.
When did you start on this journey?
I began in the 1990s.
Okay.
Yes.
Because of anything in particular?
Yes, I began when one of my children went missing. I began this journey, and it's been a long journey. So, but that sort of, when I was young, very young in high school, I wanted to be an artist. And I did a couple of years in the art room, and then they shifted me and didn't allow me to get back in the art room. They wanted me to go on, do sciences and math, and become a nurse. So, you know, I for all those years, though, you know, making those little circles in that first form year, I was intrigued that, you know, I wasn't using much color yet, or they would give you like a colored crayon to color into a square, or, you know, but it was exciting for me then. And then after they took us away from the art, because I think they just used the art a year or two to fill up the spaces. And then after that, they just took it away from us. And so I had that yearning at that time. 12 years old, I was about 12 years old. I had the yearning. I wanted to know more about it, but...
The seed had been planted.
Yes, yes. So many years later, something was going on with one of my children, and he went missing, and it just, you know, I started playing with my daughter's paint set, the little one that she took to school. I started playing with it, and after my son came home,
Thank God.
I thought to myself that this was interesting, and I wanted to go further. And so at that time, I was working in nursing, and I would take all of this practice work to work. I would practice in my breaks, my lunch hours. And then, you know, one day one of my co-workers saw what I was doing, and he said, "Are you an artist?" And I just held up my head like that. And I just held up my head, and he said, "Oh, this looks, you know, really you sell your work." And I, you know, batted my eye and, you know, lied a little bit, but then he encouraged me to keep going. You know, my style of art was something he said he had not seen before. So I continued to do it, and after my nursing days were over, I still continued to do it. So I moved, you know, and I would put them under my chairs and, you know, just pile them up. And one day I was out with my driving instructor, and he said that I was telling him about my art, and he said he would like to see it. So I invited him home, and that was how I got my first commission. And that was many years ago in Brooklyn. And I got 2 commissions from him for paintings and one portrait drawing of his son. And that was how I began. My neighbors would buy paintings, and I would still hide them because I just thought, they're just buying it because they're sorry for me. You know, so I would put them under the sofas. And when I moved to Hastings and Hudson, I went to work for Kenneth Clark. Kenneth Clark is a psychologist, the Brown versus the Board of Ed. I went to work with Doc as one of his nurses, doing private nursing care. And so all of that home was, art was piled up on top of art, you know, and I realized that Doc had been a patron of the arts. And so I decided that I would take, on a Thursday, when most of the staff was off, I would take a piece of my work and I would show it to him. And, you know, he would look, you know, he wasn't very verbal at the time, but he would look me in the eye and he would nod his head. And then he said to me one day, I said to him, do you think I'm ready to have an exhibition of my work? And he nodded his head. And that was how it began. I began to ask around who was able to give me my first exhibition. Because, you know, once I started that, people wanted to come and see what I had. You want an exhibition? Can we see the work? And so people, you know, from the town, for instance, where I live, came, and they said, you do need an exhibition. And so I had my first exhibition in 2005 in October, and I sold off all of them. I took about 31 pieces in there, and I sold most of them that afternoon. And the next day I sold the other two.
The other two, okay.
And I was still, I didn't know, because I had not exhibited my work before. And I didn't know that I had done something that no one else had done in that town. And so, an artist who was very prominent in the area, she came and she asked, how did the exhibition go? And I said, well, I sold, you know, I sold them all, but, you know, she said, but what? And because I just did not understand. I didn't know anything about, I just knew how to, what I was doing. And so she said, did you know that you have become a master? I didn't know what she meant either. But I kept doing it, and it started to get shows, and I kept selling my work. And so every exhibition I would have, I would sell, you know, and people would come and they would like my work. I would get these interviews. I started getting into newspapers, magazines. People from overseas would come to my shows. I'm like, why are they coming? You know, I was like that, you know, thinking, oh, why would people come from Australia to Westchester to see my show? And that was one of the things that woke me up at one time when someone came from the Netherlands to see my show. And I started pulling myself together and said, okay, because there were people that were saying, she didn't go to school. And that affected me a lot. And that, you know, because you didn't go to school, and they made it sound as if I wasn't doing anything, which was really interesting or important. But then when I saw people from overseas that were coming and buying the work and taking it back, and you know, I thought, you know, I'm you know, so recognition, I have been recognized many times over, and I also found that people overseas would often buy the work than the local people. You know, I started sending work to the Caribbean, as I said, Australia, the Netherlands, France. I had a woman come from France to purchase my work. And, you know, it really has given me, you know, that lift, you know, because the work that I do, it's more spiritually, you know, inclined, you know, people and their dispositions. And look at the face of my brother over there. And I go and I draw or paint something which I see in your demeanor. I would paint that. and I would paint how I'm feeling. I would paint a prayer, and I would name them, and people would look at it and say, "Oh, that's true." So and over the years though, it has kept evolving. My work changed for the better. I think it changed for the better, and here I am in Newburgh. A gentleman would say to me, "Oh, you have got to move to upstate New York. You belong up there." And I didn't feel as if I wasn't feeling it until Shirley asked me to come. And it's strange enough, I'm not very easy to say yes. And I told her yes. So here I am.
But the fact that you remain humble shows in your work. Everyone knows you've made it except you. And that's great. No, that keeps you doing what you're doing. It keeps you doing what you're doing.
Yes, I don't want to feel otherwise. I really don't want to feel otherwise. Because Neil perhaps over the years has known what I've done. And the accumulation of my work, and where I have been with this, the awards, the celebrations, some of which I won't say here, but it's better for me to feel humble about my work than to be egotistic about it. And every day, what I will say though, I find in my work that it's comforting. I say some of them are my prayers, because they are. I pray every day with my brush and my paints. I also draw my prayers. And I find that the more I pray with the tools, the more I'm shown what to do. I'm never empty here with my work. And to be honest with you, I've heard people say, "Oh, they feel so, they can't, they don't get it and inspiration to paint." And I just feel different about that, because there's never a day that I don't have something here or here to put on my paper.
So when you were waiting for your son to come home, instead of going to church to pray, you went to your studio, wherever you created, and put your prayers on paper.
I'll tell you this. I remember when my first studio, I had my first studio. I'm sorry to be moving the paper. I had my first studio, and I lived down the bottom of the hill from my studio. And I would get up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I would look around in the house, and I would be like, "Oh, I gotta get to my studio." And I would walk up the hill to my studio, and I would be there until the sun came up. So I spend a lot of time in my studio. I have a studio that I go to, business studio. I go to that studio, but I have a little place in my kitchen where I work continually. I'm always working. I take a break from my art to go to the bathroom, eat, and sleep. And then as I get up, go to the bathroom, I put my coffee on, because of my work, I do things differently than other people. So I'll make a pot of coffee, and it will last me a couple of days, because I don't want to be wasting time for my work. So I'll get up, put the coffee to warm up, and I go to my work. And if I have to leave the house at 11 o'clock, I may have, done something creatively for the world. I put my paintings out there because I think my paintings are signals. It's signals. Is this have you seen this before? Have you felt this way before? My paintings are saying that. You know, have you done this before? You know, in my paintings, I try to put that in my work because I'm a community person. I was raised in a village. I'm a village girl. So we believe in community and how people relate to each other and how we treat one another. And in my paintings, there's that community, that the message that I want to send. And not every painting I'm able to finish that message that I want to send, but I leave it alone because sometimes you can oversend a message. So I leave it alone. I work basically in portraiture. My portraits tells most of the story, especially the environment in which I live. I tell many stories with my portraits, and I'm a bird lover. I love birds, and birds are in my paintings a lot. There was one painting that was it last year? Or that was at the Hudson Museum? Yes, that has an egret in it. And I began using egrets in my painting after I rescued one. And yes, and it was with me for 3.5 hours. I held that bird, and I found it in the pond where my studio is. It had gotten tangled in the sprinkler, and so I fished it out of the pond. And we tried, it was during COVID, when we tried to get it to the vet, and they didn't take us. They said, like, take it back to the pond where you got it. So I didn't really want to take it back to the same place that it got injured. So I took it over to Hastings and put it in the park. And you know, that bird, when it walked away, it said something to me from behind. And you may know that messages can be read from behind as well, from behind people, behind animals. And that bird was so grateful that it spent 3.5 hours on my lap. You know, I don't that. But, you know, we made such a connection, that bird and I. So that since then, that egret is somewhere in one of my paintings. Yes, and if you come to my studio now, I actually have a portrait or a figure of that egret and I together, and its behavior when I just grabbed it out of the pond. That you know, pulling away, who are you? That's what the bird was saying. I don't know humans, you know.
So I don't know you, but I have to trust you.
Yes, and so with that pulling the self away from me, I realized that there was this thing that I did. You know, I started stroking the bird, and it settled down, and somehow that bird trusted me to be in that car for 3.5 hours, and so that connection with the birds sort of sent me to study more birds. And I'm into that bird thing. I won't get into that. But I'm into the whole, you know, bird thing. And a bird happened to say something to me one day. And I did something that was wrong. I did something that was wrong because I was told I couldn't feed the bird near there. But the bird was hungry. So I hid and fed the bird. And that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. But I fed the bird, and the bird came and ate everything off the windowsill. And when the bird flew away, the bird just gave off an aura. I was stunned by what the bird showed me. It was like, I was hungry and you fed me. I'm going to show you how beautiful I am. So that sort of made me want to discover more about birds and to put them also in my work. And having that relationship with birds makes me feel as if I'm still 10 years old. That's how the relationship with birds and I.
It's wonderful.
It gives me the childlike feeling. Questions?
Do you have any questions for Madge?
Yeah, I have a question on your series, or I don't know, you do a lot of paintings with women side by side.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
really interested in.
Well, the women side by side. I went to a predominantly girls' school. We were all girls. I went to a school in Montego Bay that was called Beaconsfield. Later on, they changed it to Montego Bay High School. That's the school I went, and we were all girls. We stuck together. We still stick together. Yes. The old girls, the new girls, we are still sticking together. Sometimes, I mean, you know, I need to go somewhere, one of the girls will show up. You know, so we are still in it together. And we are doing things with this togetherness, this community. I believe that when we get together as women, you know, I with so much respect for my men. I love my men. I love my mom. But the woman, a woman knows what the other woman is experiencing. I believe so. I feel that about women because even today I saw a woman that I wanted to really go over to her and say, I know that lady there. Oh, she's standing at the door. She's standing at the door. You.
Oh,
You. Yes. You. I just wanted, yeah, she sat there and the look on her face. I know, I personally have had those looks on my face. Sometimes when I'm, you know, thinking about the good of the world, I believe that we have strayed from being good in this world. And so if my work can show us the way to peace, even though I know we cannot be completely peaceful, but we can make effort, we can make some effort and strive to have that peace in our lives, you know, and to be peaceful with our neighbors, you know, and that makes the world go round.
Absolutely.
You know, so, and I strive for that, to have that peace, and that is why I try to show that in my work, that my destination, that's what I would like to completely achieve in my own life, and I wish you the same. I wish everybody, that everyone has that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now going to move on